Welcome everyone to this session of Designing for PoE Lighting and Automation, where top design professionals and subject matter experts with experience in designing and constructing Power over Ethernet intelligent buildings share their best practices and lessons learned. This session will cover how Power over Ethernet lighting and automation work within LEED and WELL to optimize your designs. Through this and future sessions, you will gain crucial skills and knowledge essential to delivering better, intelligent buildings for developers and owners. So, without further ado, let's introduce our panelists and the hosts of this training program. First, let me introduce Dana Ritchie. With 11 years of experience as a mechanical engineer and consultant for sustainable and healthy buildings, Dana is knowledgeable in several different building rating systems, energy analysis, ventilation, and indoor air quality. Dana is a LEED WELL AP and WELL AP and is proficient in the requirements for energy, health, and wellness related building certifications. Dana had the distinct honor of being selected as one of the Engineer Systems magazine's top 20 to watch women in HVAC 2020. Welcome, Dana. Next, Joseph Herbst. Joe has worked in several rapidly evolving markets over his career. His accomplishments include the creation of the world's first power management laptop chipsets, design of semiconductors that were the engine in Cisco's switches, the growth of digital video technology from CTRs to flat screen TVs, and recently the development of a PoE lighting control platform. Joe has founded 4 startups with 3 successful exits. He holds 16 patents as a BSEE from the University of Delaware, MSEE from Purdue University, and an MBA from Santa Clara University. Thank you for joining us, Joe. We also have Andy Rittenhouse. Andy is currently a specifications manager with Somfy Systems, a world-leading supplier of motorization and control solutions. Andy's focus is on commercial business solutions relating to window coverings and natural daylight management. Andy achieved his WELL AP in January 2020 and additional accreditations this year. I need to update our bio, Andy. Last and definitely the least in this bunch, you have me, your host, Tyler Andrews. I'm an influencer for intelligent buildings and Power over Ethernet. I currently lead PoE Texas, making technology accessible to facility owners with my unique mix of technical expertise, construction experience, and project management knowledge. I also host the most popular YouTube and Facebook channel and live stream about Power over Ethernet and intelligent buildings, Converge PoE. I speak and train about my project management experiences and the importance of Power over Ethernet in the new intelligent building. So, make sure my signs are up. I'll welcome all of our speakers and guests to this exciting session of Designing for PoE Lighting and Automation. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the presentation for today. So if you'll excuse me. And while we transition to the next speaker, I'll give you one housekeeping note. If you'd like to ask the presenters questions, feel free to click on the Q&A tool in the Zoom toolbar. We will have time at the end of the presentation for questions. So with that, we'll welcome our speakers and presenters today, and I am going to pass the screen control over to Dana to present to you. For 1 second, Dana, let me get the screen controls going. And take it away.
Great. Thank you, Tyler, for the introduction, and thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Let me give you a brief background of LEED and WELL. I know many of you are probably familiar with these, but for those of you who aren't, LEED and WELL are sustainable and healthy building rating systems that were developed by the U.S. Green Building Council and the International WELL Building Institute. LEED's been around for a while. It was introduced in 1998. Whereas WELL was introduced more recently in 2014. Both of these rating systems are tools to help owners and project teams build more sustainable, energy-efficient buildings that are optimized for human health and wellness. And many requirements within these rating systems can be achieved either partially or fully through the use of PoE, and that's what we really want to get into in this presentation. So why would one choose LEED or WELL certification for a building? Well, there are several different reasons, one of which is economic benefits. There are many tenants who want to locate their space within a LEED and WELL building or space. So it definitely gives one a competitive edge. Additionally, it helps companies to meet their ESG goals. That's environmental, social, and corporate governance. If you haven't heard of that acronym yet, you will very soon. It's becoming very popular, especially post-pandemic. So many companies have ESG goals that include achieving LEED and or WELL certification for their building or space. It also helps companies realize operational savings for energy, water, maintenance, and waste. Additionally, there are health benefits. Many of the requirements within these rating systems will help better the indoor environmental quality within a space. That means healthier occupants, happier occupants, increased productivity, and higher retention. And lastly, but not least, there are environmental benefits: reduced energy use and carbon emissions, water and waste conservation, and sustainable operation. There are two studies shown here on this page that I think really do a good job of identifying the cost, benefits, and ROI within each of these rating systems. We're going to provide a copy of this presentation to everybody listening here, so you're welcome to visit these links, and I would encourage you to. What they're finding in both of these links, in both of these studies, is that there is a general link between high performance buildings and benefits for energy, environment, health, and productivity. It's been proven, and there is a conceivable return on investment within each of these rating systems. So just quickly introducing LEED and explaining how it works. Under the LEED umbrella, there are several different rating systems depending on your project type. So for example, B, D, and C will work for new construction, core and shell, or major renovation. I, D, and C would be used for an interior fit out. O and M is for an existing building focusing on operation and maintenance. You can do LEED for a neighborhood development and also for homes. Within each one of these rating systems, there are a number of credits with different requirements that are lumped into credit categories for things like indoor environmental quality, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, and water efficiency. Each credit that's pursued is worth a certain number of points. So depending on the number of points that you earn a different level of certification, ranging from certified, silver, gold, all the way to platinum. The current versions of LEED that one can register for are LEED version 4 and LEED version 4.1. LEED version 4.1 provides a little bit of clarity and simplification compared to version 4 in most cases. And any LEED version 4 project can utilize LEED version 4.1 pathways, but not vice versa. So my general recommendation to project teams is go ahead and register for LEED version 4. And if you want to use LEED version 4.1 requirements for one of your credits, you can. The biggest difference between these two versions of LEED has to do with the energy model and the materials. So we could have an entire webinar on the differences in energy modeling between LEED version 4 and LEED version 4.1. But in general, LEED version 4 compares your design building to a baseline building from ASHRAE 90.1 2010 Appendix G, whereas LEED version 4.1 compares to ASHRAE 90.1 2016. And there are significant differences between those two. Again, it would take an entire hour to explain all those differences. We're not going to get into that, but that's a really significant one, and one that you should talk about with your team before deciding which version to pursue. The other major difference is the materials and resources credits. Actually, LEED version 4.1 makes this a little bit more straightforward and more clear, so I would recommend using the LEED version 4.1 credits for materials. Prerequisites and credits where PoE can play a very important role in achieving or meeting the requirements are lighting and daylighting design and controls, flexible power distribution, DC power system, energy metering, energy performance, and thermal comfort controls. Joe's going to talk a lot more about each of these later in the presentation, but just to introduce, these are just some of the credits and prerequisites where PoE plays an important role. Innovation is another area where PoE can be helpful to achieve points for LEED. Every LEED project is allowed up to 5 innovation points for things like innovative strategies, exemplary performance of an existing credit, and pilot credits, which are credits that USGBC is kind of testing out and allowing project teams to pursue. So that's another area where PoE strategies can help to earn additional LEED points. So I'm going to hand it over to Andy so he can talk to you a little bit more about how WELL works.
All right. Thank you, Dana. And let's see if we've got control here. I think Tyler is fixing to give me control of the screen so I can advance the slides. All right, here we go. I think we're about there. Sorry for that delay. So again, thank you, Dana. You know, we know that LEED is probably the best known of the green building rating systems that are used today on the projects. So like Dan said, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about or highlight the WELL building standard. So where LEED is driven by sustainable and environmentally conscious strategies, such as using sunlight as free energy to reduce the use of electric lighting, WELL really just focuses more on the health and wellness of the occupants in the built environment and addresses the multiple health benefits of natural light, such as our natural occurring circadian rhythms. WELL is a comprehensive approach to well-being, and we're seeing now we're just moving from WELL version 1 to WELL v2, and there are significant changes between the two standards. And like LEED going from 4 to 4.1, there's a lot of things that I really like about WELL v2. I think they simplified some things, especially in the light concepts, but they have changed. They've gone from 8 concepts to 10. We still have 108 features, and WELL is essentially a roadmap for improving the quality of the elements with inspired design decisions that not only keep us connected, but facilitate a good night's sleep, support our mental health, and helps us to do our best work every day. And you'll see that if you look at the concepts here, you know, air, water, thermal comfort, materials, light, we have a lot of the same elements that we address here in WELL as we do in LEED. It's just we look at it a little bit differently, each element. So the WELL v2 process, I'm sorry about that. We're having a little. There we go. So projects pursuing WELL certification can earn points based on performance outcomes for various policy design and operational strategies that can achieve one of 4 certifications: bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So again, as we go into WELL v2, we're talking about 10 concepts, 108 features with 110 possible points. It's important to know that every WELL project is verified through on-site testing of building performance. WELL v2, now we just focus on 2 main groups: owner-occupied and WELL core. And the 6 core principles of WELL are all going to be evidence-based, technically robust, globally reaching wellness standards that benefits all types of people. So WELL, what I like about WELL is that they've taken strategies that we've used for years, right? We talk about staircase design and how we want to put a staircase in the middle of the floor and encourage people to walk up and down the stairs. What the WELL standard has done is said, look, we want to make sure our built environment is healthy, and we need to create standards so that we all are going down the same path. We also, you know, we look at WELL as kind of a sister to LEED, and the fact that when we look at WELL and LEED holistically, it helps us design both sustainable and healthy built environments, campuses, and communities. And the importance of that, of doing both, not just one or the other, is noted within WELL itself in the form of an innovation credit, Innovation 05, for projects that achieve both LEED and WELL certifications. So the two do go hand in hand very well. I think a project that pursues both LEED and WELL and is going to be holistically a much healthier and sustainable project. So now that we've laid some of the groundwork, Joe is going to go in and talk about the benefits of automation, lighting, and PoE as a system.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate the time and look forward to, questions towards the end of this. I'd like to go a little bit into Power over Ethernet technology and then specifically how it applies to LEED and WELL. Sorry, hang on. So what is Power over Ethernet? Power over Ethernet is actually a 20-year-old technology. It's been around for quite some time. You're probably most familiar with it with either security cameras or telephones, the desk phones that you had in offices. It's intrinsically safe, so it's fundamental DC power. It represents something that you can stick in water and not be shocked by. It has digital age amenities, so it is essentially an information source and supports the ability to have individuals control their environment directly. It collects information. It ties together the millions, billions of IoT sensors that exist in the world that largely don't talk together. So PoE represents a platform by which occupancy sensors or air quality sensors or ventilation sensors or flow meters can all come together and essentially bring a common platform of information. And then probably one of the things that I like most is that Power over Ethernet is a much lower natural resource cost. So relative to high voltage, you can see an example picture here, it is 60% less copper and 100% less steel because you no longer need conduit. And the gauge wire that was defined 100 years ago when most lighting, for example, was deployed is no longer necessary. We can get away with much lower size wires. It is essentially, the gateway to digital amenities. It brings together lighting, AV, HVAC. It brings together access control, shade and blind control. So it's an information platform largely based on open standards in the internet and all of the tools and resources that are brought to bear through that. So let's talk about a couple examples of what PoE can do in a building. So living walls. So sorry, went back. So living walls are an example of something that requires a whole system of information. We need to know the relative humidity, the temperature, the light levels, airflow, water flow. So those are all systems that need to be tied together in a very specific way to support having this living wall type application. Water collection and reuse. There is tremendous opportunity within buildings to essentially use the gray water that comes through sinks or faucets and reuse that, or take outside rainwater and essentially collect that and use that within the building to essentially make a much more sustainable system. Geothermal heating and cooling. This is a great example of where you can leverage the relatively consistent temperature of the earth underneath of the building, and then in the winter or summer, essentially reverse the flow of water to essentially bring a much more stable thermal source for your HVAC. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the specific examples that are available, say, in LEED and how they map to PoE. So first, DC power distribution. Inherently, a light bulb, which was an AC device, is a DC device. LEDs are inherently DC. Every single light bulb today has a conversion from AC to DC that is inefficient. And it gets more inefficient the more you dim down the light. So as you dim down the light, it's not giving you the full energy savings potential that a just DC power distribution system can do. Lighting, so PoE lighting controls, you can have every individual fixture, every fixture individually controllable. energy metering. So you can have every fixture or every circuit have an energy meter and essentially be able to track and quantify savings as a result of a policy change. For example, sweeping the lights off at 10 o'clock at night, how much does that save me? I can aggregate the energy metering data before and after that policy change. And then life cycle impact. One of the most phenomenal things, especially post-COVID, is the need to be able to change commercial real estate at a much more rapid pace. So people don't want a 10-year lease. They want like 1, 2, maybe 3-year leases, which means that you need to have the flexibility to change where walls are. And PoE gives you that ability by changing behavior in software, not in hardware. So you no longer need to call an electrician to rewire circuits. You can essentially just reprogram it in software. Thermal comfort. So again, being able to take more than one temperature sensor that lives in one thermostat that's 4 doors down from a conference room, having the ability to distribute temperature sensors throughout the building. I have noticed very often that you'll see a 10-degree gradient in a commercial office, and that doesn't require a call for heat or a call for cool. It requires a call for fan and ventilation. And so the ability to essentially distribute the disparity in heat and cool much better is something that a PoE platform can bring. Demand response. So we've seen some of the massive heat waves that have come through. In Portland, we just had a really big one. But having the ability to dynamically respond to load shedding. So utility says, hey, I need you to load shed 20%. The end user can then define what that looks like. So I'm not beholden to just load shedding across the board 20%. I can actually scale 100% here, 50% here, don't load shed any here. But in aggregate, I have the ability to say, yes, I meet the overall demand requirement. Daylight harvesting. So having the ability to essentially not have lighting or HVAC responding inappropriately to daylight pouring through windows. So looking at that, not just through light sensors, but just intelligent time of day algorithms has the ability to realize savings just from looking at your windows and shades performance. And then energy performance. So cities like New York City have recently deployed targets. So in 2030, you will have energy kilowatts per square foot at targeted. So having the ability to look forward, not just backwards towards a baseline, but forward towards a target for your energy performance is something a PoE system can bring. Relative to well, we can have every fixture individually controllable. You can map that to an app, you can map that to a wall switch, but having the occupants change not just the intensity of the light, but maybe the color temperature of the light. Maybe they like it more warm, maybe they like it more cool. Because we have a DC-based distribution system, one of the things I found with AC systems, you can have a 60 hertz harmonic next to a 0 to 10 wire that causes a very slight flicker, or even worse, a ballast for fluorescent lighting. So because we have a DC-based distribution, that phenomenon of flicker largely goes away. Daylight design strategies we talked about a little bit, but circadian rhythms, now I can tie essentially a color temperature and intensity to a time of day and essentially emulate, for example, warm in the morning, cool midday, warm again in the afternoon, and have a 100% transparent to the occupants of the space. So let me give you a quick example of 3 separate technologies, HVAC, shading, and lighting, that PoE can pull together to bring much greater value. So this is an example of a room where I want to be able to look at sunlight that's coming in and have the ability to dynamically lower shades, increase or decrease the ambient light, and or increase or decrease the fan based on temperature and light set at a sensor, let's call it 4 foot away from one window height away from the window. So I can look at the sun as it's coming through that window and dynamically adjust the shades to give better thermal comfort, adjust the light levels to provide a better balance and energy savings, and then ultimately have a reduction in glare as a result of lowering the shades on things like the monitors. even if you didn't have sensors, you could do this just using basic algorithms calculating where the sun will be any given time of day. So just having an intelligent system, even if it doesn't have sensors, has the ability to essentially provide glare reduction, thermal comfort, and light level efficiencies. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Andy.
Thank you, Joe. That was really some great information. Let's make sure we got control of the screen here. So one of the things we wanted to, or I wanted to kind of touch on today is because, you know, though commonly overlooked in early schematic design phase, your Division 12 window shades are really a key tool in managing our natural light and circadian rhythms. And so both WELL and LEED do have significant changes relating to roller shades in Division 12. As an example, WELL V2 has simplified credit requirements in the integrate solar shade L05 parts 1 and 2. So with V2, it's real simple. Part 1 is manual shades. Yes, you can do manual shades. And though that's obviously very inefficient. And then part 2 is for your automated shades. And so it's very simple. It's very cut and dry. LEED 4.1, we start looking at direct power, the direct current power pilot credit, which you've heard us talk about. You probably heard it on the street. And under option 1, where you have the individual systems like lighting, the major loads, they don't address shades there. But when you look at the building on a holistic approach, and we use low voltage power distribution for shades, such as PoE, we can help contribute towards that energy model when you're trying to get that possible 18 points. And then, of course, the integrative process. So with PoE is going to integrate people, systems, and business structures and practice. And though it can be challenging to really, you're not going to find specific credits that are going to address, you know, hey, you get a point if you integrate shades and lighting. But I think it's important to understand the spirit of both the WELL and LEED rating criteria. And if the owner, your client, or if you're the developer, if you've embraced WELL and LEED and sustainability, you're truly trying to achieve these standards, you're going to look at the various concepts that we're fixing. I'm going to get into here in the next, and you're going to see those various concepts that talk about daylight harvesting and daylighting and daylight autonomy. And you're going to say, yeah, you know, maybe I'm not going to get a point for that integration, but it's certainly going to go a long ways towards the spirit of what we're trying to do. As an example, if we're looking at daylighting and LEED, and we have automated shades, and we're able to create that environment, and we know with daylight autonomy that based on the calculation, we know that particular part of the floor is going to have ample sunlight from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So you have enough sun so that you're not going to need electric lighting. But then maybe we get some glare coming in, and the sensors detect the glare, so the shades come down. And when the shades come down, then all of a sudden the sensors say, oh, we are now below 300 lux, so we got to increase the electric lighting because shades have deployed. And so that's what we're going to, when we talk about integrated process, the things that we can do with an intelligent system like PoE software, we can enhance the spirit of what we're trying to do within WELL and LEED. And I'm trying to go, there we go. Okay, so it's coming up. Sorry for that delay there. So when we look at WELL V2, I look at materials optimization is one that I've really started to focus on. That in the past, shades really didn't have a play in materials, but now we have opportunities for things like EPDs on motors, ROHS, under enhanced material restrictions. Now WELL has a specific point for ROHS compliant electronics such as roller shades. Integrated solar shading, we talked about that, automated shades, and then contact reduction. This is another small area that is commonly overlooked, but very important, and that's surface touch management. This is where we can say, okay, to increase the wellness in our space, we can control the shades through voice. We can use virtual keypads such as our smartphones. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to reduce the surface touch management. on our products, and still allowing for that thermal comfort, right? So we still need to be able to take local control and control those shades versus just fully automated, but we want to do it in a safe and well environment. So through innovation, we can look at strategies with PoE and management software to help bridge some of these concepts and features that, again, still can be very standalone-ish from one feature to another, but it lets us better validate through good real-time data and performance of the integrated system so that we truly have a single ecosystem within our built environment. Because we talk, when we look at these standards, especially it's talking about validate, right? We want to measure, certify, and monitor our systems. Well, if everything's manual, we can't do that. If we don't have good real-time data to analyze, then we're really not achieving the spirit of the standard. So let me advance the next slide here. And LEED. So LEED, again, we've talked about this. It's driven by the sustainable and environmentally conscious strategy, so a little different than WELL. But we can achieve all of these through traditional or standalone strategies. Again, we can hit the different points or the different credits as a standalone, but PoE is going to achieve these or help us achieve these more efficiently while contributing to the sustainable and environmentally friendly solutions that we work towards as we go towards net zero and embodied carbon reporting. Again, LEED, we have indoor environmental quality. That's given. That's daylighting. Shades are there. It's pretty cut and dry. But now we're looking at things like when we talk about EPDs and we look at PoE. Well, one of the significant differences with PoE or low voltage is that we can get EPDs on structured cable, right? Where when you start looking at traditional AC wire, that's very difficult. Indoor environmental quality, right? Patient bedside control. This is another one that's a key point to where this particular credit requires that, and this is healthcare only, but it requires that patients be able to control their shades from their bed, right? Which therefore obviously needs to be motorized. But it's not just shades, right? We want that patient to be able to manage everything, the entire environmental condition of that room. So shades, lights, HVAC or AC, the TV, everything. And it takes the systems being able to work together to achieve that. And then of course the direct power current credit that we talked about, which is really important when we talk about a whole building model. So this is I think, it's a lot of information that's there. I think it's important that we understand that we can achieve not just the standards, but we can go beyond that when we use systems like a PoE. So with this information, the big question is, what do we do next? And so Dana is now going to take us through the next steps, which are very important, so we know where to go from here.
Thanks, Andy. So let's talk about next steps. First, when you decide you're going to pursue LEED or WELL certification, the first thing you want to do is establish your team. Now, listed here are some team members who are especially relevant to PoE, but there's several others. We need to have our architect involved, lighting designer, civil engineer, landscape architect. There's a big team involved when it comes to pursuing LEED and or WELL certification. But for sure, you want to have your LEED and your WELL consultant, your owner, your PoE specialist, and your MEP designers as well. Then once your team is together, you want to host a charrette with the entire team. And I can't reiterate this enough. It's not enough to just have a portion of the team present. When you're looking at these rating systems, you're looking at them as a whole. You need to have sort of an integrated design approach with all the team members to look at what opportunities you have to incorporate PoE to achieve several different goals for these, or several different credits for each of these rating systems. So during that charrette, which is just a fancy word for a meeting where all stakeholders in a project attempt to resolve conflicts and come up with a solution to look at the path forward, you need to define the project goals, How do those goals align with LEED and WELL strategies? Where does that fit in? Identify a general path to achieve those goals, and then assign roles and responsibilities to each team member. And then lastly, you move forward with the design, wanting to make sure you're using an integrated design process. And as that design progresses, continuing to verify alignment with goals and credit requirements for the rating systems that you are pursuing. So this is what we think are the best next steps to have a successful LEED and or WELL project with PoE integrated. So I'm going to hand it back to Tyler.
Got me, Dana. Yeah, I had my mic off. So, thank you very much for this presentation. So I'm going to turn on my camera here, and we will move forward with the presentation. Now, that was a fantastic panel discussion. I don't think you could ask for any better information than that. Now comes the really interesting part of the presentation today, looking for questions from attendees and participants. So if you haven't already done so, and you have questions for Andy, Joe, or Dana, hit the Q&A. I'm going to go to the Q&A right now and start asking questions. So we're going to come here and stop sharing the screen. Oops, sorry. Takes me a second to get there. All right, so I'm pulling up the Q&A. So hit the chat, hit the Q&A, let us know what questions you have. So I think an important, a lot of people ask when they're thinking about LEED and WELL is like, would you quantify the practical value as a designer to an owner? So Dan, if you could help give like a 2-minute statement here. I'm a designer. How do I quantify the value to an owner?
Sure. Yeah, I think a great place to start is those 2 studies that I linked in the beginning of the presentation. They're both really well done and talk about the costs and benefits of each rating system and then the ROI associated with each. Those really sum it up well, but essentially you're going to have benefits because you're going to have better indoor air quality in the space, which means happier and healthier occupants, more productivity, less absenteeism. There's a lot of studies on that. It's hard to quantify the value of your employees, but those studies really help to do that for you. And then again, you're going to have economic benefits from energy savings and water savings, more efficient processes and systems, and it's a desirable feature for many tenants. So there's an economic advantage there for sure. You know, a tenant who's looking for a space that's LEED certified or WELL certified is going to pay a premium for that, and they know that and they want that.
That's great feedback. Well, Andy, I'm going to ask you a question on a simpler vein, though. I'm a designer or a contractor. Who would you say would be the kind of what would be the attributes of a customer or an owner who you should talk to WELL about, or who would be most interested in WELL as a certification program?
I'm sorry. So who should we talk to as with a designer, or who would be interested in this?
So I'm a designer or I'm a contractor. I know about LEED and WELL, and so who would be the kind of owner, like if you were to give some features or attributes of what kind of owners would be interested in learning more about LEED and WELL and potentially having us introduce it to them?
Okay, great, thanks. I think it would be an owner that, first of all, they have to truly embrace the process of sustainability and wellness, right? They have to understand that, yes, they have to see the value. They have to see the marketability of their project. There has to be an owner who wants to attract that type of client that maybe has millennials that, are driving, because let's be honest, right? If we're trying to lease 7 floors of our building, and we're trying to attract a specific type of clientele, and they have a lot of younger millennials that have these expectations, right? So I guess we should say those designers or developers that have the clients, that have the expectations. We want the amenities. We will not work in a building that's not healthy, or that doesn't have the fitness centers, that is not going to have proper lighting and daylighting and things like that. So an owner that is just looking to lease a space and has no value in the health benefits in the building, really, they're not going to spend the money. They're not going to have any interest in this. They're just going to put manual aluminum blinds up in their building, and hey, I really don't care. But those that want to make a better space, and you'll see that, you'll know your developer is going to kind of be minded like that, or like-minded. Just a lot of times you'll see that because they're already going down that road with buildings, or you'll see they've attended some conferences and things like that. But they really have to have that like-minded. They have to have that. They have to embrace it as a whole. They have to, so.
That's a great response. So Joe, I'm going to ask you, you've dealt with a lot of open-ended and potentially ambiguous situations. And, to be real transparent with the whole audience here, there's not a well-trod, highly defined path for incorporating power over Ethernet lighting or automation and blinds and features into LEED and WELL. It's not like there's you just go check this box or check that box. So what should and Dana talked about it, that you call in a PoE specialist, somebody like you, what is it that what kind of things would you bring to the design charrette or the design process for the designers and contractors related to LEED and WELL?
So I think, there's the vision of the owner and the designer, and essentially bringing the vision of what they want to achieve and what specific elements of LEED and WELL they want to incorporate. Then essentially would define a strategy in terms of how we go about laying the infrastructure to support that. And so one of the greatest virtues and benefits of PoE is its ability to just rapidly adapt to change. So if an owner or designer says, well, wait, can we add this? Or wait, can we change this? The fact that it's one, an open standard platform, and two, rich in terms of software flexibility, that gives the designer, the owner, the ability to just balance, personal interests, market objectives, cost barriers, or just fundamental timing requirements to get this in the ground and built, and give them just that rapid response, like, yes, if you want to do this, here's how we go about it. But essentially just get the vision, get the initial focus, and then in terms of what you want to achieve with the LEED or WELL, and then that would establish essentially the baseline infrastructure. But the scalability of a PoE platform then allows you to stable on or remove elements very quickly and cost efficiently.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I have a question for you, Joe and Dana, that came from our audience, and it's about harmonic distortion. Harmonic distortion is effectively reduced in a building by using PoE instead of PoE solutions in a retrofit scenario in lieu of lighting. Does the harmonic distortion reduction or power quality see any kind of clear benefits in LEED or WELL? And Joe, maybe you can weigh in. Is replacing fluorescence really with PoE effectively improving the power quality and reducing harmonic distortion?
Yes, there's a number of factors. So power factor is one that's come up, but because AC has inherently a 60 hertz ripple, and fluorescence essentially will just pass that ripple on through to the light to about 120 times a second, there is an inherent flicker. And you can see this when you go into older buildings that have bad ballasts. And that is subliminally very irritating. I have, fixtures in our warehouse that are fluorescent, and there is just that background flicker that now drives me crazy. And that's the type of thing that I shouldn't be distracted by. So having a DC-based power distribution and lighting platform inherently is just a much more, or a less intrusive or a less irritating background phenomena. But I'll let Dana jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think from a LEED and WELL perspective, there is no specific credit related to harmonic distortion, but replacing fluorescence with LEDs does have a significant impact on your lighting power density and your overall energy use. There's an energy model that's required within the LEED rating system associated with the greatest number of points in the entire rating system. It's 18 points out of 110. So having a significant lighting power reduction throughout your building really has a great benefit to the credit with the greatest number of points. In addition, there are several other lighting related requirements in both the LEED and WELL rating system that couldn't easily be accomplished without PoE lighting.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. And we have another question maybe for you, Dana, that would be a good question from John. Does PoE itself qualify as a DC power system, or do you need to have a system like Volt Server in addition to a PoE lighting system to be able to qualify as a DC system? You know the answer on that one?
I don't know the answer to that one. I'm not as familiar with the DC pilot credit, so I can't answer that.
Hey, well, that's great. I'm glad you could be honest with it. I would assume, John, no, you don't need Volt Server because both PoE and Volt Server are both DC systems, so you should be able to benefit from a DC system from both. But Dana is the expert, and if she said, I don't know 100%, I trust Dana above all.
I will say, let me add to that pilot credits, there is some flexibility with them because they're pilot credits. So USGBC introduces them so they can kind of feel out from everybody who's attempting them, how doable is this? Do we need to add some more flexibility in these requirements? Do we need to consider changing the language a little bit? So there's an opportunity there to talk with the reviewers and really kind of make that credit work for you.
That's fantastic. All right, well, guys, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to take over the screen here and give one last shout out to everybody to send us your questions. If you have any questions or would like to speak to any of the panelists, you can email them directly. If you don't have their email address, you can hit me up on the, you can hit our admins up on the link below or the email below, and you'll be able to get your questions answered directly and in person. And answer questions in person. It's one of the exciting things about having this quorum of intelligent people. So I want to thank all of our presenters today, Andy, Dana, and Joe. You guys have been fantastic. This is excellent information. I invite all of you out there to go ahead and do a shout out on chat to thank our speakers. Thank you for attending today, all of you who participated in today's webinar. We love doing these webinars and feel like they are a fantastic use of time, and we appreciate your time coming today. I'm going to encourage you to keep an eye out for our BIXI presentation coming up in August. The crew doing Designing for PoE Lighting and Automation are presenting and doing a masterclass at the BIXI conference live in Las Vegas. If you need tickets, you can reach out to any one of us or to me, and I can help you get tickets at this email below. And if you and like I said, if you need to speak to anybody, shoot us a quick email. We really appreciate getting to know you. And you can also post your questions with the post-session questionnaire. If you take a minute to respond, that'll help us improve our trainings and let us know what you want to get trained on next with the intelligent building. So with that, we will see you at the next webinar or at the BIXI session. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks again to our presenters.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.